Hey guys, tonight we head back, way back, to a time before kings, before thrones, and before anyone knew the name Saul. The sky is soft and dark above ancient Israel, and you're just a villager with sandals full of dust, leaning on a crooked fence post when you hear it, the panicked bray of donkeys escaping into the night. That's how this journey begins, not with a war or a prophecy, but with a few wandering donkeys. You probably won't survive this if you're a sandal, because we are going to walk a lot. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and what time it is where you are. I love seeing where you all listen from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're asleep in a small mud brick home in the hills of Benjamin, one of the smaller tribes of Israel, often overlooked, and honestly kind of fine with that. The walls are cool, the breeze is light, and your legs are sore from yesterday's grain hauling. But the knock at the door isn't going away. Kish's donkeys are gone, someone whispers, like it's the apocalypse. Kish, your boss, sort of, a wealthy landowner. His prized donkeys have vanished into the countryside. They're fast, stubborn, and surprisingly good at slipping out of gates. Guess who gets to chase them? You and the tall guy. Saul. He's Kish's son, and probably the tallest person you've ever met. Dude's head clears every doorway, and then some. But he's not royalty, yet. He's just some guy. Bit shy. Maybe too clean for this donkey job. Let's just get them back, he mutters. He doesn't want an adventure. Too bad. You head out before sunrise. The terrain is dry and scratchy. Low shrubs and sharp stones, all under a blistering sun that shows zero mercy. You hike through Ephraim, then through Shalisha, then through Shalim. No donkeys, just empty trails, a few suspicious goats, and one farmer who insists he saw something hoof-shaped heading east. Mainstream historical fact: the ancient Israelite tribes didn't have central leadership yet. This was pre-monarchy. Judges ruled loosely and power was local. So, a missing donkey was more than just a nuisance. It was economic panic. Saul isn't talking much, but you catch him scanning the horizon like he's watching for more than animals. Like something's pulling at the edge of his thoughts. You joke about putting up a lost donkey sign, but he doesn't laugh. By day 3, even your blisters have blisters. The food is low. Your water skin is a sad squish of warm droplets. Let's go back, Saul sighs. My dad's probably more worried about us now than the donkeys. And honestly, he has a point. That's when your servant, not Saul, the other guy, says, "Wait, there's a man of God in this next town, a seer. Maybe he can tell us where the donkeys went." You squint. A psychic? No, well, sort of. He's legit. People say his words never fall to the ground. You roll your eyes, but honestly, what do you have to lose? Your ankles are already threatening to unionize. The town ahead is built into a hillside, sun-baked and humble, and the moment you arrive, something's off. People greet you like they've been expecting you, like you're characters in a book they already read. Quirky historical tidbit. Early Israelite prophets were often part of prophetic guilds, bands of musical, ecstatic, spiritual types who weren't just predictors of future events, but community leaders, judges, and poets. Less wizard, more beatnik rabbi with a tambourine. You spot the seer, Samuel. He's older, but his eyes burn with something sharper than age. He stares straight at Saul. Not you, not the servant, just Saul. The donkeys you lost 3 days ago have been found, he says calmly. But don't worry about the donkeys. Something bigger is at hand. Okay, hold on. That's specific. Like, freakishly specific. Saul freezes. You shift uncomfortably. Samuel gestures for you to follow him. There's a feast happening, and you're both the surprise guests of honor. Not weird at all, right? Historians still argue whether Saul's encounter with Samuel was spontaneous or staged. Some suggest Samuel already had divine insight. Others think this was a political move, leveraging lost donkeys as a way to bring a future king into his orbit. Either way, something big is unfolding. At dinner, you're seated at the best spot. The cook brings out the portion set aside earlier. This piece was reserved for you, he says to Saul. This is beyond unsettling, reserved before you even knew you'd be here. After the feast, Samuel brings you to a rooftop. The stars are brilliant above, but his voice carries more weight than the night. You've been chosen, he tells Saul. You will lead Israel. God has seen your heart. Saul blinks. Me? I'm from the tribe of Benjamin. We're nobodies. I'm a nobody. But Samuel doesn't argue. He just waits. You, meanwhile, are trying to quietly calculate how much of this is symbolic, how much is hallucination, and whether donkey retrieval usually leads to divine job offers. In the morning, before you head home, Samuel does something strange. He pours oil on Saul's head, a private anointing. No crown, no ceremony, just a whisper of destiny in the sunrise. You're officially in too deep now. You leave the town with Saul, the taste of roasted lamb still faint on your tongue, and the smell of olive oil lingering in the air. Because, in case you forgot, he just got anointed. Yep. The tall guy you've been trudging through donkey trails with, he's apparently the next leader of Israel. Not elected, not even asked. Just, boom, chosen. Saul's quiet as you descend the ridge, his face somewhere between dazed and deeply alarmed. You, on the other hand, are already thinking logistics. Kings need robes, right? And guards. Is there a king starter pack? Or does he just wing it? He doesn't ask for advice, though. He's stuck in his own head. I'm not that guy, he mutters. I'm not a leader. You shrug and say something wise like, well, maybe don't mess up the first week. The path cuts through scrubby valleys and scrapes across low, chalky hills. Sheep bleat in the distance. Birds dive and chirp like none of this matters, which, to them, it doesn't. But as you cross a fork in the road, things start getting weirder. You'll meet 2 men by Rachel's tomb. Samuel had said earlier, they'll tell you the donkeys are back. Sure enough, 2 guys in faded tunics pass by and casually mention, your father's donkeys turned up yesterday. He's worried about you now. They keep walking, unaware they just fulfilled part 1 of a bizarre prophecy scavenger hunt. Then comes part 2, the 3 men going up to worship, carrying goats, bread and wine. You laugh when you spot them cresting the hill. arrowy in a scroll somewhere. Saul doesn't even reply. He's just watching it all unfold like it's been choreographed. Mainstream historical fact. Rachel's tomb, mentioned here, is still considered a sacred site today, though the exact location is debated. Its presence in the narrative anchors Saul's story in deeply ancestral soil. Rachel was the matriarch of Benjamin, Saul's tribe. The connection isn't subtle, and then comes the final sign. A band of prophets descends from the high place. Lyres, tambourines, flutes, the whole ecstatic ensemble. Their chants rise and fall like ocean waves. They look more like a traveling jam session than a religious gathering. Suddenly Saul stops. His eyes go wide, his breathing shifts, and then he joins them. No hesitation. He's in the middle of the swirling, shouting, spirit-filled chaos. His hands lift. He chants. He prophesies. The Saul you knew, the one who grumbled about donkeys and wanted to go home. Gone, at least for now. You kind of stand off to the side, unsure if you're supposed to clap or dance or start speaking in rhymes. One prophet hands you a rattle. You shake it half-heartedly, hoping this doesn't count as blasphemy. A nearby farmer watching the scene whispers, "I Saul among the prophets." It's the kind of phrase that sticks. People will be saying it for generations, whenever someone acts wildly out of character. Like if your accountant suddenly joins a punk band. Quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe these prophetic bands may have used music and movement to enter ecstatic states, a practice not unique to Israel. Ancient Near Eastern cultures had similar traditions where altered consciousness was linked to divine encounters. Think ancient rave, but sacred. Later, Saul stumbles out of the circle, panting. He looks changed, calmer, maybe, or just emotionally jet-lagged. Historians still argue whether this transformation was divine possession, psychological catharsis, or simply cultural tradition. Was Saul actually overcome by the Spirit of God, or swept up in communal euphoria? Either way, he's rattled. You walk with him back toward home. He's back to being quiet. But now the silence feels charged, like he's hearing things you can't, like his story has tilted on its axis, and he's trying to walk straight on a slanted world. When you arrive back in town, people rush out to greet you. Kish has been pacing for days, but he mostly stares at Saul like he barely recognizes him. What happened? Someone asks. Where have you been? I saw glances at you, then back at them. The donkeys are fine, he says. We met a prophet. That's it. No mention of oil, or prophecy, or royal destinies. The future king of Israel just lies by omission and changes the subject. You nod, because, frankly, you're not sure you'd believe it either. The town doesn't press him. There are always weird stories when donkeys go missing. People return with spiritual revelations, new sandals, or a goat they swear followed them home. That's village life. Later that night, you catch Saul staring at the stars again, his expression unreadable. Are you really going to be king? You ask. He doesn't answer. And in that silence, you realize something important. Saul may have been chosen, but he hasn't chosen himself yet. The morning comes too fast, too bright, and too loud. birds screeching like they own the place, your knees creaking like wagon wheels. Saul's already up, pacing. You can tell he didn't sleep. His head's full of prophecy and kingship, and the overwhelming weight of becoming something more than a guy who used to chase livestock through backcountry trails. You brew some barley tea, more grass than flavor, and ask, so, what now? You gonna build a palace in the goat pen? He just stares into his cup. Samuel said there'd be a public ceremony, a gathering at Mizpah. You nearly dropped the clay mug. Mizpah. That's not just a town, it's a historical spotlight. The place where tribes once rallied to fight injustice, where leaders were chosen, judged, sometimes humiliated. You suddenly feel underdressed. The walk there is slow, not because of distance, but dread. Saul keeps lagging behind, like his feet are attached to invisible doubts. Along the way, farmers pass you, herders, a few merchants, even a couple of dusty old warriors, swapping stories about the time they punched a Philistine right in the sandal. And then, Mizpah, it's packed, 12 tribes, banners flapping, carts creaking, arguments over who brought what, elders nodding gravely at each other like they're about to auction off a sheep. And in the middle of it all, Samuel, looking like he knows the twist ending before the story begins. Mainstream historical fact. Mizpah was indeed a major tribal meeting place. Archaeological evidence suggests it served as a religious and political hub in the tribal era. Some scholars link it to Tel En, Nasby, a site north of Jerusalem, key terrain in the ancient hill country. Samuel raises his hand, the crowd hushes. His voice is gravel and fire. Today, the Lord will reveal your king. You shift uncomfortably. Is this happening now? He draws lots, tribe by tribe. First, Benjamin. You nudge Saul, but he's already backing away. Then clan by clan, the Matrites. Now the people are murmuring. That's Saul's family. Finally, person by person, and then silence. No Saul. Samuel squints at the crowd. Is not here. An awkward pause. The kind of pause where even the sheep look confused. So they ask the Lord directly, because when someone ghosts a coronation, you might as well go straight to divine tracking. He's hiding among the baggage, comes the answer. Wait, what? You push through the crowd, and yep, there he is. Tall, hunched, half covered in travel sacks like some very nervous tent pole. You almost laugh, almost. You pull him out, literally, and drag him toward the center. The crowd parts, gasps, then roars. He's tall, remember, really tall. He looks the part, and for a moment, that's enough. Samuel nods toward him. There he is, your king. You're not sure Saul's breathing. You lean over and whisper, smile, maybe wave. He kind of grimaces. Close enough. People cheer. Some shout praises. Others don't. Because here's the thing. Not everyone is on board. Some grumble. Can this guy save us? They sneer. Looks more like a sheep herder with stage fright. A Saul hears them. He hears everything. Quirky tidbit. In ancient Near Eastern cultures, kings were often believed to be divinely chosen, but that didn't mean universal approval. Some communities, especially rural ones, resisted centralized power, fearing taxation or conscription. Kingship was always a mixed blessing. Samuel wraps up the event by recording the rights and duties of the king on a scroll. Then he dismisses everyone. No banquet, no crown polishing montage. Just, okay, thanks for coming. Go home now. You walk back with Saul. His jaw is tight. They didn't all accept me. Dude, you say gently. You literally hid in the luggage. He lets out a sad laugh. It's the most human sound you've heard from him all day. Historians still argue whether Saul's reluctance was genuine humility or political theatre. Was he overwhelmed or making a subtle play for sympathy? Either way, it worked, at least for some. Days pass, life resumes, sort of. You go back to tending fields, patching fences, pretending like your buddy wasn't just declared king in front of thousands of people. Saul, he goes quiet, withdraws. Then something shifts. A message comes from the East Jabesh. Gilead is under siege. A brutal Ammonite warlord named Nahash is threatening to gouge out the right eye of every inhabitant unless they surrender. It's not personal, it's symbolic. Cripple your archery, wreck your pride, send a message. Word reaches Saul as he's plowing a field. Yes, still plowing. Crown? What crown? But something clicks. He straightens. His voice drops. Bring me a yoke of oxen. You know that tone. That's not farmer Saul anymore. He slaughters the oxen, cuts them into pieces, sends the bloody chunks across Israel with a message. Whoever doesn't follow Saul into battle, this will happen to your oxen. Effective. Gross but effective. Suddenly, all 12 tribes rally. Because when a guy who once hid in the baggage starts mailing out cow parts, people listen. The ox meat messengers do their job. From Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, the tribes take one look at the hacked up beef and think, well, that escalated quickly, and suddenly the guy who once muttered about missing donkeys now commands a war-ready army. Over 300,000 men show up, some eager, some confused, all ready to fight, or, at the very least, not have their livestock diced like vegetables. You're with Saul when the numbers come in. 300,000, a scout pants, and Judah's added another 30. Saul blinks, then laughs. It's not a victory laugh. It's more, how did this become my life? But he tightens his belt, grabs a spear, and starts moving like someone who's not just pretending anymore. You march overnight. The hills roll on like dark waves. Your sandals bite at your heels, and someone near you snores while walking. Welcome to ancient Israelite warfare, mostly hiking, sometimes stabbing. As dawn breaks, Jabesh, Gilead appears like a bruise on the horizon. Smoke curls lazily over the town walls. The Ammonite camp is sprawled outside it, all arrogance and zero-guard towers. Nahash thinks he's got this wrapped up. No backups coming. He gave the town 7 days to surrender, and, bless his evil heart, he never expected those days to be used constructively. Mainstream historical fact. The siege of Jabesh, Gilead marks Saul's first major public act as king. Scholars often credit it as a unifying moment. When Israel began transitioning from a loose tribal confederation to something more centralized under royal leadership. All because one brutal tyrant underestimated the guy with commitment issues. Saul divides the troops into 3 companies. classic nighttime ambush playbook. You crouch low beside him as he murmurs strategy, and then, just before sunrise, you attack. It's chaos. Horn blasts, screaming, swords clashing against makeshift armor. The Ammonites didn't see it coming. Literally. They're half asleep, still picking the olives out of their beards, and suddenly there's a stampede of shouting Israelites slicing through their ranks. You dodge a flailing tent pole, trip over a collapsed wine jug, and somehow end up face to face with a guy who smells like onions and rage. Fortunately, Saul barrels through like a storm, cutting down enemy after enemy. He moves like someone possessed, but this time, it's not music or prophecy, it's leadership. By midday, the Ammonites are in full retreat, the Israelites are cheering, and the people of Jabesh Gilead are sobbing in disbelief, grateful to still have both eyes. Quirky tidbit. Later legends suggest the people of Jabesh Gilead never forgot this rescue. Some traditions say they honored Saul even in his darkest days, long after others had turned against him. Loyalty, once earned by blood and desperation, tends to stick around. You find Saul catching his breath beneath an olive tree. His tunic is torn, his hands trembling, but his eyes, steady. A few warriors approach. What about the ones who doubted you? They growl. The men who said, "Can this man save us? Let's kill them." The air thickens. You glance at Saul, expecting him to lean into the power, maybe purge his critics like a proper tyrant. Instead, he raises a hand. "No one dies today," he says quietly. "Not on a day like this. The Lord saved Israel." You don't say anything, but your opinion of him shifts. That's the moment Saul becomes more than tall. He becomes real. Historians still argue whether this act of mercy was genuine kindness or calculated optics. Was Saul securing national unity or playing the long game for political clout? Maybe both. Ancient leaders rarely had the luxury of being just one thing. Samuel soon calls another assembly, this time at Gilgal, to renew the kingdom officially. The energy is different now, less suspicion, more celebration. You ride into the valley on a borrowed donkey, squinting at the hundreds gathered, all whispering Saul's name. There's music, dancing, roasted grain cakes and fresh wine, people shouting, "Long live the king," like they mean it this time. Saul stands tall at the center. No hiding, no baggage. He accepts the crown not just in title, but in presence. His face is still serious, still shadowed by doubt, but now there's purpose in his posture. You wonder if he finally believes what Samuel saw in him all along. And Samuel, he steps forward to speak, and the whole valley stills. The old prophet doesn't sugarcoat it. He reminds everyone how they begged for a king, how they rejected God's rule in favor of human government. He makes it clear, this was your choice. If you obey the Lord, all will be well, he says. If not, he leaves the sentence dangling. You shift uneasily. This isn't just a party. It's a warning disguised as a coronation. And then, because Samuel really knows how to make a point, he calls on God for thunder and rain. During harvest season, when it never rains, the clouds answer immediately. Boom, people scream, crops flatten, hair frizzes. A donkey literally bolts into a fig tree. You grab Saul's arm. Did you know he could do that? He doesn't answer, but even he looks rattled. The people beg Samuel to intercede, to ask God not to kill them all for their ungratefulness. And Samuel, in his eternal grumpy, wisdom grandpa tone, says, "Just stay faithful, okay?" You look around the soaked, trembling crowd. You think this is going to be complicated, because Saul may be king now, but he's got two shadows over his shoulder, one shaped like divine expectation, and the other shaped like his own self-doubt. And the storm's only just begun. The field's dry, but the tension doesn't. After Gilgal, you expect some royal action, maybe a throne room reveal, or Saul inventing taxes and accidentally ruining the economy. But instead, he slips back into silence. He's king now, officially, prophetically, and politically, yet somehow. You're still watching him dig post holes for sheep pens like nothing happened. You ask him one morning, over stale flatbread, "Are you just gonna keep pretending this is normal?" He sighs. Normal's easier. But normal doesn't last. Trouble always finds kings, especially ones trying to act like peasants. This time, it's the Philistines again, that ever-present thorn in Israel's side. Their territories still buzzing with tension after the whole Ark debacle a few years back. Remember when they borrowed the Ark of the Covenant and got plagued by tumors and rats? Yeah, no one's quite forgotten that. And now they've rebuilt, reinforced, and they're ticked. So when Saul's own son Jonathan, yes, surprise, he has a son, takes it upon himself to attack a small Philistine garrison, it's like throwing a lit torch into a barrel of goat cheese, messy, dramatic, and bound to explode. Mainstream historical fact. The Philistines were not just random invaders. They were a powerful, sea-faring people, possibly descendants of the sea peoples who harassed ancient Egypt. They had iron weapons, organized armies, and way too many giants in their family trees. Israel was still figuring out how to hold a spear right. The odds weren't exactly even. Word spreads like wildfire. The Philistines muster 30 Saracen chariots, 6 Saracen cavalry, and foot soldiers, as numerous as the sand on the seashore. The numbers are probably exaggerated. Ancient record keeping was more about vibes than math, but the threat is very real. Saul panics. He rallies troops at Gilgal, but they're twitchy. Farmers with pitchforks, shepherds with clubs. Some start defecting, slipping away at night to hide in caves or behind thickets. You overhear one guy whisper, "This is Ark, level bad." Now here's the kicker Samuel had told Saul, "Wait 7 days. I'll come. I'll offer the sacrifices." Day 1 passes, then 2, then 5. By day 7, your fingernails are chewed down to the elbow. Still no Samuel. The soldiers are restless. The whispers get darker. Maybe Saul's not the one. Maybe this was all a mistake. And then, finally, Saul cracks. He does the unthinkable. He offers the sacrifices himself. You try to stop him. Dude, no, you're not a priest. You're not a prophet. This is literally the thing Samuel warned about. He shrugs, eyes haunted. They're leaving. I had to do something. And as the smoke still curls into the sky, guess who shows up? Yep, Samuel. The old prophet rides in looking like a storm wrapped in linen. He sees the altar, the blood, the ashes. He doesn't yell. That would have been easier. No, he just stares, eyes like dried out thunderclouds. What have you done? And Saul tries to explain. I waited, I did, but they were leaving, and the Philistines. Samuel cuts him off. You've acted foolishly. You didn't keep the Lord's command. Your kingdom won't endure. Oof, you physically recoil. That moment hangs like smoke that never clears. Historians still argue whether Saul's action was a desperate mistake or a justified choice under pressure. Some say it was the act of a leader thinking on his feet. Others say it showed a fatal flaw, impatience wrapped in fear. Either way, the verdict is in, and it's devastating. Samuel adds, the Lord has sought out a man after his own heart. He doesn't say who, but you feel the chill settle in Saul's bones. He walks away. Not Samuel, Saul. He doesn't scream, doesn't argue. Just turns and walks off like a man whose future has been quietly yanked out from under him. The army, what's left of it, trembles in place. You try to rally them, but half your forces have either hidden in holes or crossed the Jordan in full panic mode. Only about 600 men remain. 600. Against thousands of Philistines with chariots and iron weapons. And here's the cherry on this disaster Sunday. There are no swords. Not really. The Philistines, in their brilliance, had outlawed blacksmiths in Israel. So unless you were Saul or Jonathan, your weapon was probably a sharpened farm tool. Quirky tidbit. Some Israelites fought with ox goads, plowshares, or even sharpened bones. It was less battle of helms deep, and more agricultural mutiny, the musical. You sit by the fire that night, watching sparks fly like desperate hopes. Saul doesn't speak. He stares into the flames, mouth tight, hands still trembling from the altar. You finally say, that was bold. He doesn't look at you. I should have waited. You're still king, you offer weakly. For now, he says, but not forever. And that's the difference. Before, he worried about being king. Now he knows. His time has an expiration date. But what comes next? You glance at Jonathan, sharpening his sword beside the fire with a look you've come to recognize. The let's do something crazy look. You just hope the next gamble doesn't leave you stuck hiding in a thorn bush with nothing but a rake. Because with the Philistines pressing in and Saul unraveling from the inside out, something's got to give. You wake to Jonathan whispering, come on, let's pick a fight. Not exactly how you wanted to start your day. You sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and realize he's serious. Sword strapped to his back, armor half fastened, grinning like someone who thinks two people against an entire Philistine outpost sounds fun. Or at least not boring. No one knows we're going. He adds like that somehow makes it better. So, of course, you follow because that's Jonathan, brave, reckless, strategic in a wing-it kind of way, and honestly, a better warrior than his father, maybe even a better leader. The two of you climb down a jagged pass between two rocky crags, named Bozis and Sene. You immediately trip over one of them, because of course you do. Jonathan helps you up. then gestures toward the enemy post up ahead, just barely visible. Here's his plan, show yourselves. If the Philistines say, wait there, you do nothing. But if they say, come up here, that's the sign that God's delivering them into your hands. Your eyes widen. That's your sign. He nods solemnly. Mainstream historical fact. This moment is one of the earliest examples in Israel's history of divine confirmation through circumstance. Not prophecy, not dreams, just a battlefield coin tossed disguised as theology. Sure enough, the Philistines see you and shout, come up here, and we'll teach you a lesson. Jonathan beams. Oh no, what follows is chaos, bravery, and sheer insanity. You scramble up the cliffside, hands bleeding, knees skinned, while Jonathan charges into the outpost like someone who's been holding in a fight for weeks. In moments, 12 Philistines are down. The others panic, and then somehow the fear spreads, like actual fear, not metaphor. Earthquake, level terror. The ground trembles. The Philistines turn on each other in confusion, slashing wildly. Horses bolt. Tents collapse. It's a divine ambush with a side of total bedlam. You stare at Jonathan, who's panting, covered in dust, sword shaking in his grip. He just shrugs. Told you. Aback at the camp, Saul notices the commotion. Who's missing? He demands. They count heads. Jonathan's gone. Of course, Saul wants to seize the moment. He orders a pursuit, desperate to prove he's still the hero of the story. You run with the army, chasing the Philistines down the valley. But here's where things get weird. Saul, in a dramatic flare of overzealous spirituality, makes everyone take an oath. Cursed be any man who eats before evening. Before I've avenged my enemies, you immediately regret everything. It's hot. The ground's uneven. You're swinging hose and broken jugs as weapons. And now you're fasting while fighting. No one's happy, especially not you. Then Jonathan, unaware of this dumb vow, finds some wild honey dripping from a tree branch. He dips his staff in, tastes it, and suddenly his eyes light up like someone just gave him an iced coffee. Quirky tidbit. Ancient wild honey in that region came from bees nesting in rock crevices and tree trunks. Sweet, sticky energy in a world without protein bars. A soldier gasps. Your father cursed anyone who eats. Jonathan licks his fingers. Yeah, then my father made a dumb curse. Later that evening, the men are starving. They slaughter animals in a frenzy, eating the meat with the blood still in it. A major no. Saul panics and builds a makeshift altar to fix the spiritual mess. And then comes the real kicker. He wants to consult God about the next move, but gets no answer. Nothing. Silence. Saul assumes someone's sinned, so he declares a lot-casting ceremony. He's ready to execute whoever broke the fast, even if it's Jonathan. Yep, you're standing there when the lots are cast. First, the army is cleared. Then, Saul and Jonathan are selected. Next round, boom, Jonathan. Saul tightens his jaw. You shall surely die. Oh, Jonathan shrugs again, the way he does when facing things like cliffs, armies, or unfair oaths. I ate honey. If that's wrong, go ahead. You nearly faint. The army stares in disbelief, and then, like a miracle in slow motion, they rally. No, he brought this victory. He doesn't die today. Historians still argue whether Saul truly intended to kill Jonathan or if it was political theater. Was he testing loyalty, performing obedience, or had he actually lost the plot? Regardless, the people save Jonathan. They step in, the king backs off, and suddenly Saul's crown feels a little less shiny. You walk back to camp that night under a sky full of stars and silence. Jonathan says nothing. Saul says less. You finally break it with a whisper. That was close. Jonathan doesn't answer. He just keeps walking, jaw tight. You realize then Saul is losing more than the Lord's favor. He's losing his son's faith too. But it gets worse. Because the Philistine pressure hasn't disappeared. It's spread like mold in an old wineskin. Raiding parties harass the borders. The people are scared. Saul fights back, yes. He has victories over Moab, Ammon, and Edom. He builds a reputation. He's fierce, strategic, dangerous when provoked. But the cracks are there. He gathers warriors like armor around his insecurity, builds up a militia, a dynasty, in training. You can feel the throne growing heavier by the week. One night, by firelight, you ask him, "Do you still hear God's voice?" He looks up, startled. "What? Like before?" You say. "Back when you prophesied, when you hid by the supplies." Do you still hear him? He doesn't answer for a long time. Then finally, I hear echoes. It's not comforting. You lie awake that night, staring at the stars, wondering when the echo becomes silence, and what happens to a king when it does. The next morning, you wake to a low horn call and the uneasy shuffle of soldiers outside the tent. Saul has summoned you early, before the dew even lifts from the ground. Something's up, and you can feel it in your bones, like the tingling you get right before a lightning storm. He paces as you arrive, the folds of his robe whipping around his sandals like he's trying to physically outrun the decision. He's already made. The Lord, he says slowly, has given me a mission. You nod. Missions are his thing lately. Always half glory, half penance. This one, he continues, is different. The prophet came. That gets your attention. Samuel hasn't been around much. Not since the honey incident. But apparently, he showed up just long enough to deliver a divine directive. Go and destroy Amalek. You flinch. Historical fact. The Amalekites were long-time enemies of Israel, dating back to the Exodus. Think guerrilla-style attacks, ambushes on the weak and straggling. There's a grudge here, and Saul's mission, wipe them out. Completely. People, animals, all of it, quirky tidbit, ancient war oaths often included. Harem, or the ban, a religious command to utterly destroy something as an offering to God. It wasn't just conquest, it was ritual cleansing mixed with a holy fire sale. But something feels off. Saul's eyes burn with resolve, sure, but also a flicker of calculation, not devotion, not humility. You march south with a massive army, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 from Judah. It's impressive, overwhelming even. The kind of force that makes your stomach churn with power and discomfort all at once. Saul pauses just before reaching the Amalekite city. He sends messengers to the Kenites, warning them to leave. You showed kindness to Israel, he says. We won't harm you. A diplomatic move. Smart, strategic, but also weirdly selective for a divinely mandated purge. The battle begins. You charge with the others, blades drawn, heart thudding in your ears. The Amalekites fall quickly, caught off guard. Their cities burn, their people scatter. It's brutal. Dust chokes the sky. The screams are short, then gone. But then, Saul spares the king, Agag. You see it happen. Agag is dragged before Saul in chains, robes torn, beard matted with ash. Saul studies him, and for a moment you think he'll follow through. But no, he gestures, and the king is set aside alive. Worse still, the soldiers begin collecting the best sheep and cattle. Plump goats, shining herds, anything too healthy to waste. You hesitate. What about the command? Saul glances at you, lips thin. Well, sacrifice them to the Lord. Historians still debate this moment. Was Saul hedging his bets, or trying to look faithful while padding his political capital? Maybe both, maybe neither. But you feel it, deep down. Something broke. The next day Samuel appears. An oaf. He is not in a gentle mood. He finds Saul in Carmel, where the king is literally building a monument to himself. You can't make this stuff up. Samuel greets him. Flat voice, no smile. Saul beams. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. Samuel cocks an eyebrow. Then why do I hear sheep bleating in my ears? Saul blinks. Oh, the people spared the best animals to sacrifice to God. But we destroyed everything else, I promise. Samuel doesn't buy it. You stand back as the prophet's voice rises. It echoes through the valley. Thunder without a storm. He speaks of obedience, of how God doesn't care for burnt offerings if the heart behind them is wrong. To obey, Samuel says, is better than sacrifice. You wince. That line, it'll be quoted for generations. Then comes the gut punch. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. You glance at Saul. He stares at Samuel as if the words haven't landed yet. Then, slowly, his face contorts. Grief, fury, desperation. I've sinned, he admits, but his eyes dart sideways. But honor me before the elders. Come back with me, so I don't lose face. He's still thinking politically. Samuel almost refuses, but then turns, robes snapping like sails in the wind. Before leaving, he does something chilling. He calls for Agag. You watch the Amalekite king approach, trembling. Surely, he says, the bitterness of death is past. Samuel replies, your sword made women childless. Now your mother will be. And with a single stroke, he finishes what Saul would not. You want to look away. You don't, because that's the moment it becomes real. Samuel turns and leaves. You never see him speak to Saul again. Back at camp, Saul sits in silence, arms wrapped around his knees. You approach. He doesn't look up, just mutters, I did what I thought was best. You don't answer. You're not sure there's anything to say. That night, you sleep fitfully. The stars above seem colder, the ground harder, and the silence, it's louder than ever. It begins with oil, thick, golden, fragrant, olive-based with hints of myrrh and cinnamon. The kind of scent that clings to your skin for days. You smell it before you see it, long before you know why you're there, hiding behind a dusty stone fence outside the little town of Bethlehem. Samuel walks ahead of you, wrapped in a cloak that seems heavier than it used to. He hasn't spoken much since the Amalekite incident, just short commands, mostly to himself. You tried asking him what you were doing here, but he gave you a look that basically said, "If I told you, you'd lose your head before dinner." So you wait. Bethlehem, small, pastoral, sleepy. The kind of place where people raise sheep, sing songs by firelight, and fall asleep with straw in their hair. You don't see how this place could possibly matter to a kingmaker like Samuel. And then you do. You meet Jesse. Jesse is a farmer, wiry and sunburnt, with a house full of boys. Samuel invites himself in. Prophets can do that, and says, with all the casual weight of a divine bombshells, "Bring me your sons. One of them is chosen." You nearly drop your water skin. Jesse lines them up. Eliab comes first, tall, broad-shouldered, soldier material. You instinctively nod, obvious choice. Samuel shakes his head, no pee. More sons pass, Abinadab, Shammah, the rest. You lose count. Samuel doesn't blink. Still no. And then the prophet turns, voice low. "Are these all?" Jesse looks sheepish. "Well, there's the youngest, David. He's watching sheep." Historical fact. In ancient Israel, the youngest son usually got the scraps, least inheritance, least responsibility, least respect. The Hebrew word used to describe David, Quatan, doesn't just mean young, it can also mean insignificant. Quirky tidbit. Shepherding wasn't glamorous. It was boring, dirty, and dangerous. You were alone for weeks, fighting off wild animals with nothing but a sling and bravado. They send for him. You lean against the fence, half expecting another quiet, serious kid. But no, he arrives running, mud on his sandals, face flushed, harp slung across his back like a backpack. There's something in his eyes, not cocky, not afraid, just clear, like he's seen things, sung things, wrestled things in the dark and come out laughing. Samuel straightens. The oil comes out. Without a word, the prophet pours it over David's head. The smell hits instantly, earthy, sweet, ancient. You watch as the oil streams down David's curls, glistening in the afternoon sun. He squints up at Samuel, bewildered but not frightened. That's the thing. He doesn't flinch. Historians still argue whether this was a private anointing or something Jesse's whole household witnessed. Some say only the brothers saw. Others believe the entire town buzzed with rumors for weeks. What's clear? Something shifted that day. And it wasn't just the crown. You follow David outside. He's wiping oil off his forehead, muttering, didn't even say anything, just poured it. What does that mean? You smile. It means you're not just watching sheep anymore. David stares at the horizon. Good. The sheep never listen. Later, back in Saul's court, things get strange. The king has changed, not outwardly. His robes are still regal, his beard still sharp. But the man inside, he's restless, brooding. You catch him muttering to himself, pacing at odd hours, gripping the edges of his throne until his knuckles go white. The palace brings him magicians, healers, even a guy who claims to soothe people with goat aromatherapy. Nothing works. And then someone suggests music. Find a harpist, a courtier says. Someone who can chase away the darkness. They send messengers. You ride with them. And when you knock on Jesse's door again, this time with a king's seal, it's David who steps forward. He doesn't ask questions. He just grabs his harp. You remember the first time he plays in Saul's chambers. The strings shimmer under his fingers like threads of light. The air thickens. Saul leans back, eyes fluttering, and just like that, the storm quiets. That's David's magic, not tricks. Not chance, just music, heartfelt, raw, unscripted. Quirky side note. Ancient Hebrew harps, lyres, technically were made of acacia wood and gut strings, light enough to carry, complex enough to hypnotize a king. Soon, David is summoned more often. He plays while Saul eats, while he rests, even while he stares blankly into the fire. The king never says thank you, but he stops gripping his spear so tightly when the boy enters. You pull David aside one night. What are you thinking? He shrugs. He's sad. You raise a brow. You think a king can be sad. I think anyone can be sad, David replies, even if they wear gold. There's more though. You notice Saul watching David longer now, not fondly, not warmly, like someone watching a shadow grow longer behind him. Jealousy is a quiet kind of poison. It drips slow. Meanwhile, you walk through a world shifting beneath your feet. Farmers whisper about strange winds. Prophets keep to themselves. Samuel disappears altogether. You visit David in his tent one evening. He's tuning his harp with one hand, scribbling verses on goat parchment with the other. You peek at the words. The Lord is my shepherd. You smile, still thinking about sheep. He grins. Aren't we all? You sleep to the sound of harp strings that night, gentle, distant, like stars humming lullabies. And for a moment, just a moment, you forget that the crown is still cracked, that Saul still sits on a throne with no oil, and that somewhere, not far away, another king is already waiting. By now, you're getting used to Saul's moods. One moment, he's laughing at some poorly told joke over roasted lamb. The next, he's gripping his temple like a thundercloud cracked open inside his skull. You know when it's coming. You feel the air tighten. The room goes still. His servants shuffle a little farther from the throne. You reach for David's harp. But today is different. Today, the messenger bursts through the palace gates with no warning, panting, dusty, wild-eyed. The Philistines, he says, they've gathered again, in the valley of Elah. You groan, not them again. Historical fact, the Philistines weren't just cartoon villains. They were advanced, organized, and terrifyingly well armed, especially compared to the more tribal Israelite forces. Iron weapons, towering champions, coastal strongholds. Not the kind of enemy you casually brush off. Saul slams a goblet on the floor. Call the army. We march at dawn. And so, with armor clanking and flags whipping, you find yourself standing in a hot, dry valley, sandwiched between two ridges, Israel on one, Philistines on the other, a standoff. No one moves, no one dares, until he shows up. Goliath, You can't breathe the first time you see him. He's not a man, he's a mobile fortress, nearly 10 feet tall, layered in bronze armor that glints like a second sun. His spear, like a weaver's beam, his shield, big enough to serve whores, deuvers on for 50 people. He steps forward and bellows across the valley, voice like cracking boulders. Choose a man to fight me. If he wins, we serve you. If I win, you serve us. A quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe Goliath may have had acromegaly, a condition causing abnormal growth and possibly even vision problems, which might explain why he needs a shield bearer and why he doesn't dodge well. But let's be real, the man is still terrifying. He repeats the challenge every single day, 40 days, 40 nights. No one moves, and Saul doesn't speak of it. He paces his tent, avoids eye contact. He's tall, yes, but not Goliath tall. And more importantly, he's not God's favor tall anymore. The oil is gone. The spirit has shifted. You feel it. Then one morning, David arrives, bread and cheese in hand, sent by Jesse to check on his older brothers. And David, being David, walks straight into the camp like he owns the place. He hears the Philistines' taunts, sees the cowering soldiers, and raises an eyebrow. Who's this uncircumcised loudmouth? You cough. That's Goliath. He shrugs. He's mocking God. Oh. David starts asking around. What'll the king give the guy who kills him? Saul hears about this and summons him. And when the young shepherd enters the tent, wild-eyed and smelling faintly of sheep, Saul almost laughs. I fought lions, David says, and bears. God help me then. He'll help me now. Historians still argue whether this was pure faith or teenage overconfidence. Maybe both. Maybe David had nothing to lose. Maybe he just knew something Saul forgot. Saul sighs and offers his armor. It's too big, obviously. So David steps out in a tunic and sandals, grabs 5 smooth stones from the brook, and walks toward a giant. You follow at a distance, heart pounding. The valley is quiet. Even the birds stop chirping. Goliath roars when he sees the boy, calls him a dog, a joke, an insult. David just cocks his head. I come to you in the name of the Lord. You squint. Is he? Smiling, David runs, sling whirling. The stone flies. Crack. It hits dead center. Goliath lurches, staggers, falls like a toppled monument. Dust explodes around him. The Philistines panic. David doesn't hesitate. He draws Goliath's own sword, barely able to lift it, and finishes the job. You flinch. He stands on the body, hair blowing in the wind, blood on his sandals, and for a second you see it, the future. Not a shepherd. Not a harpist, a king. Quirky side note, David only used one of the 5 stones. Some rabbis suggest the others were in case Goliath's brothers showed up. Others say it was just a shepherd's habit, always carry extras. The army surges. The Philistines flee. Victory is loud, messy, overwhelming. Back in camp, Saul stares at David. Whose son is this? You blink. Seriously. Has Jesse's kid? Someone mutters. Saul doesn't respond. Just watches David walk away with the giant's sword in one hand and his youth somehow still intact. Later, as the camp celebrates, you sit with David under a fig tree. He's quieter than usual, turning the sling over in his hands. That was insane, you whisper. He nods. But necessary. You pause. Did you ever doubt? He smiles faintly. Only when I saw the size of his toenails. That night, songs rise from every tent. Dances break out. Wine flows. And somewhere in the noise, a new chant begins. Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. You hear it. So does Saul. He turns toward the sound, expression unreadable, and you feel it then, like a candle flickering in the wind. The jealousy, back, sharper, stronger, and this time it won't go away. Jealousy, you realize, is a tricky beast. It doesn't roar, it whispers. It doesn't march in, it sneaks. And in Saul's case, it spreads like wildfire in a dry forest, invisible but utterly devastating. You watch him from the shadows of his own court. The king, once vibrant, now paces more, his eyes darting to David whenever he can. The harp, still played, but the peace it once brought feels thinner, like a paper shield against a rising storm. There's talk, quiet, suspicious talk, among the servants. Saul's mood swings grow more volatile. Sometimes he smiles, almost normal, and then, suddenly, he's furious, slamming goblets, yelling at shadows. You overhear the guards whispering about a strange cloak Saul's wearing. Heavy, dark, embroidered with lions and eagles. They say it's like armor for his soul, though it seems only to weigh him down more. Historical fact. Ancient kings often wore elaborate cloaks to signify power. But scholars debate how much psychological impact these royal garments had. Did they comfort the wearer or remind him of the heavy crown he carried? One evening, you catch a glimpse of Saul's paranoia in full bloom. David is playing the harp in the great hall, soft notes flowing like water over stone. Saul's eyes are glazed, distant. Suddenly, he grabs a spear and hurls it, right at David. The harp strings snap. David ducks, heart racing. You swear you hear a gasp from the court. Saul's face twists. You're trying to steal my throne. David, ever calm, just stands. My lord, I serve you. But the king's eyes say something else. Quirky tidbit. Throwing spears indoors is a great way to make enemies, and worse, ruins expensive instruments. The court is tense after that. No one knows what to say. Saul's counselors urge caution, but the king only grows more suspicious. You start hearing strange rumors. Saul wants to kill David. Some say he's consulting witch doctors, seeking forbidden knowledge to protect his reign. Historians still argue whether Saul's mental decline was due to trauma, possible neurological illness, or the sheer weight of kingship. Whatever it wasn't pretty. Meanwhile, David keeps his head down. He continues playing, fighting battles, and winning hearts. You see the soldiers whisper his name with awe and hope. You wonder if Saul hears it too. One day, Saul summons his son Jonathan, a loyal friend to David, and issues a harsh command. Find out if David plans to betray me. Jonathan, torn between loyalty to his father and his friend, promises to watch closely. You watch Jonathan struggle, his brow furrowed. He sneaks around David's camp, tries to read the unspoken. What he finds is surprising. David isn't plotting, he's praying. Quieter now, more reflective. Preparing for a destiny bigger than any of you. You catch Jonathan and David together under the stars. Whispers, laughter, shared dreams. It's a fragile peace, but peace under a jealous king is a delicate thing. One night, you wake to shouting. The guards are chasing David, torches blazing. David flees into the darkness, his sandals slipping on the rocky path. You can't help but think of those 5 stones in his pouch. This isn't the end of the story. It's only the beginning of the chase. And you wonder how many more times a sling and a stone can save a man. The night swallows David whole as he flees through the wilderness. You trudge behind, heart pounding like a war drum, feet slipping on loose stones, lungs burning in the cold air. The stars above blink down silently, indifferent to the chase unfolding below. You wonder how a young shepherd, barefoot, unarmed except for that trusty sling and a handful of stones, can outrun a king's soldiers. But somehow, David moves like the wind itself, slipping through caves, scaling hills, disappearing into shadows. Historical fact: the Judean wilderness was a rugged, rocky landscape, dotted with caves and narrow paths that offered perfect headouts for fugitives, and it served as David's refuge during these perilous times. Quirky tidbit: some caves David hid in are still tourist spots today, and legend claims the echoes in those caves once carried his prayers. Imagine that, your whispers bouncing back at you like an ancient voicemail. Historians still argue whether David's flight was a strategic retreat or a desperate run for his life, but one thing's clear: it marked a turning point. In the wilderness, David gathers a ragtag band of outcasts, misfits, and loyal followers, the original startup team, if you will. They're not soldiers in shining armor, but hungry, desperate men united by hope and shared stories of oppression. You watch as David transforms from hunted to leader. In the flickering light of campfires, he tells stories of giants slain, shepherds saved, and a God who never forgets. The men listen, their faces tired but eager. Even the stars seem to lean in. One night, as you settle near the fire, you overhear a conversation between 2 followers. Did you hear about the time David cut off Saul's cloak while he slept? You chuckle. That story's a classic. David sneaking into the king's camp, getting close enough to take a piece of his robe, but sparing his life. The ultimate, I could have hurt you, but I didn't, move. It's a bold act of mercy and a dangerous message to a jealous king. David's respect for Saul is genuine, even as his own safety hangs by a thread. The wilderness tests David's faith and patience. Days stretch into weeks. Food is scarce, sleep is elusive, but his spirit remains unbroken. You feel the weight of each moment, the constant tension between survival and destiny. Quirky tidbit: some say David's men called him the Anointed, but others claim they just called him Boss, probably because he paid in promises and good stories. Historians still debate how much of David's time in the wilderness was spent in battle versus reflection and prayer. You catch glimpses of both. One dawn, as the sun paints the sky in soft pinks and oranges, David stands on a cliff edge, eyes closed, whispering a song of trust amid chaos. You realize that even in the darkest times, hope can shine brighter than any torch, and somewhere Far away, Saul broods in his palace, unaware that his former harp player is becoming a legend. The game is changing. The chase is far from over. But you're starting to see why this story has lasted millennia. It's about survival, yes. But more than that, it's about the heart's unyielding quest for justice, mercy, and a place to belong. Days pass like slow rivers, but the tension never eases. You find yourself in a small village on the edge of the wilderness, where whispers of David's growing band mingle with rumors of Saul's fury. The villagers watch you cautiously. They've heard the stories. Some fear the king's wrath, others see David as a beacon in the darkness. You wander through narrow alleys and bustling markets, the scent of baked bread and spices lingering in the air. Children play near wells, their laughter a sharp contrast to the unrest you carry inside. Historical fact: small villages like this were common gathering spots in ancient Israel, often serving as hubs for news and trade between tribes. You overhear elders debating the future. Some believe Saul's reign is doomed, others cling stubbornly to loyalty. The atmosphere feels thick with uncertainty. Quirky tidbit in one village. You spot a strange little shop selling Philistine protection charms, made of carved bones and feathers, surely a tourist trap of its day. Historians still argue whether these charms were widely used or just a fringe practice. But the idea of spiritual protection in a brutal world makes you smile. You meet an old woman named Miriam, her eyes sharp despite the years etched on her face. She tells you stories of David's courage, how he saved her son from bandits, how his songs brought hope to the weary. Her voice softens as she speaks of Saul. The king is lost, she says. He forgets the people, the promises. You nod, feeling the weight of her words. Later that evening, you sit around a fire with David and his closest friends. The mood is light, stories flowing easily. But beneath the laughter, you sense the undercurrent of danger. Jonathan, Saul's son and David's secret ally, arrives quietly, bringing news from the palace. Saul's paranoia deepens. He's hunting harder, striking without warning. David listens, eyes flickering with both sadness and resolve. You realize the friendship between Jonathan and David is more than political. It's a lifeline in a world unraveling. You watch as they share a quiet moment, their bond a fragile thread connecting two sides of a divided kingdom. Quirky tidbit. Some scholars suggest Jonathan and David's friendship was one of the most enduring in history, even speculating on the depth of their relationship. Whatever it was, it changed the course of events. Historians still argue about the exact nature of their bond, but there's no denying its power. As night deepens, you feel the tension lift just a little. For now, hope still burns. But you know that soon, the shadows will grow longer again, and the story will move toward its next impossible twist. The kingdom feels like a house on fire, and you're caught in the middle of the smoke. Saul's rage is no longer just whispered. It's shouted from palace walls and shouted through the streets. You see the soldiers, grim-faced and relentless, moving like shadows hunting the wind. David's band grows restless, their laughter quieter, their eyes harder. You remember the harp strings breaking from that spear, how fragile peace really was. One morning, David and his men take refuge in a deep cave, cool and dark, the air thick with silence. You sit beside him, watching his face, lit by flickering torchlight. The man who once played music to calm a king is now a warrior and a fugitive. Historical fact: caves were often used as hideouts during ancient times, providing natural defense and shelter from harsh weather and enemies. Quirky tidbit: this particular cave is now famously called the Cave of Adullam, which roughly means refuge or hiding place. Pretty literal but somehow poetic, right? Historians still argue whether David's time in the cave was more about planning battles or deep spiritual reflection, but it's clear this period shaped the man he was becoming. In the cave, David receives troubling news. Saul's men have destroyed a nearby village, punishing anyone suspected of aiding David. The cruelty hardens you all. David's resolve stiffens like iron in a forge. You watch as David makes a bold decision. Instead of retaliating with the same violence, he sends a message, a signal that mercy will be his weapon, not just a shield. One day, Saul and his soldiers enter the very cave where David and his men hide. Your heart stops. David's men want to strike, but David stops them. He sneaks close to Saul, cuts off a piece of his cloak, then slips away unseen. That moment, the mercy shown to a king who hunts him, echoes through your mind like a soft whisper of hope. It's a reminder that even in darkness, light can find a way. Quirky tidbit: this cloak, cutting story, inspired a popular ancient folk tale about the cloak thief with a conscience. Kind of a biblical Robin Hood moment. Historians still debate the exact details and whether this event happened once or multiple times, but its symbolism is undeniable. Later, you hear Saul's voice, shaking with a strange mix of anger and awe, confessing to his guards that David is more righteous than he is. It's a fragile piece, like a soap bubble glistening in the sun, beautiful but ready to burst. You wonder how long this fragile dance can last before the kingdom falls apart completely. For now, you hold on to the hope that even kings can be changed by mercy, and you feel the story pulse with the possibility of redemption, even in the darkest chapters. The air feels thick with change, as if the very ground beneath you is waiting to shift. Saul's grip on the throne is slipping, but no one says it outright, not yet. You watch as the king grows more isolated, his advisors turning cautious whispers into outright dissent. Meanwhile, David's following swells like a rising tide, drawing in those hungry for justice and a new future. You feel the tension of a kingdom on the brink, balanced precariously between loyalty and rebellion. Historical fact: the power struggles during Saul's reign marked the first real transition from tribal leadership to a centralized monarchy in ancient Israel. Quirky tidbit: some scholars suggest Saul's name means asked for or prayed for, which is ironic, considering how desperately he clings to power even as it slips away. Historians still argue whether Saul's downfall was a tragic personal failure or an inevitable consequence of Israel's political evolution. One day, Jonathan approaches David, their bond stronger than ever despite the kingdom's fractures. Jonathan warns David that Saul's suspicion has reached a dangerous peak. "You need to flee," he says quietly. You watch as David, torn between loyalty and survival, prepares to leave the land he's fought so hard to protect. The night before his departure, David visits the home of a prophet named Samuel, an old man with piercing eyes and a voice that carries weight beyond years. Samuel blesses David, speaking of a future filled with kingship and peace. You feel the warmth of hope in that moment, a flicker against the growing darkness. Quirky tidbit: Samuel was the last of the judges and the first of the prophets, making him a bridge between Israel's old ways and the new kingdom to come. Historians still debate how much Samuel influenced David's rise, but his role as a spiritual guide is undeniable. As dawn breaks, David slips away, leaving behind the shadows of his past and stepping into an uncertain future. You follow at a distance, feeling the bittersweet pull of endings and beginnings. The road ahead is long and winding, but David's story is far from over. It's a tale woven with courage, friendship, betrayal, and a hope that refuses to die. You can almost hear the psalms he will one day sing, songs of lament, joy, and unshakable faith. And you realize this journey is more than history. It's a timeless reminder of resilience and grace. You follow David into the soft light of a new dawn, the world around you slowly waking, birds stirring and dew clinging gently to the earth. The road ahead is quiet now, but your mind hums with the echoes of all you've seen. The music, the battles, the betrayals, and the moments of mercy that linger like whispers in the wind. David's footsteps are steady, but you can sense the weight of uncertainty pressing on his shoulders. Each step feels like a promise to himself and to the people waiting in the shadows that better days are coming, even if he can't yet see them clearly. Historical fact: David would eventually become the second king of Israel, uniting the tribes and establishing Jerusalem as his capital. A turning point in biblical history that shaped the region for centuries. Quirky tidbit: despite his regal status, David was known for writing many psalms, songs that ranged from heartfelt prayers to raw, emotional outbursts, making him possibly the world's first singer-songwriter. Imagine dropping an album like that today. Historians still debate how much of David's life is historical fact versus later storytelling, but his impact on culture, religion, and history is undeniable. As you walk alongside him, you reflect on the strange twists of fate. A lost donkey leading to a kingdom, a shepherd boy who becomes a hero, and a jealous king haunted by his own shadows. You remember the harp strings breaking, the broken cloak, and the moments when mercy cut through anger like a blade. Now, the story begins to slow, the pace gentle and soft like the fading light of evening. You feel the pull of rest, the quiet promise of peace after the storm. The air cools, the stars begin to twinkle awake, and the world seems to breathe out a long, slow sigh. You realize this story isn't just about donkeys or kings or battles. It's about the human heart in all its messy, beautiful complexity, about the courage to forgive, the strength to hope, and the quiet power of faith As your eyelids grow heavy, you imagine David's voice rising in song, soft, steady, full of longing and light, and you feel a calm settle over you, a gentle closing of the day's book. So, as you drift off, remember this: every lost thing might just be the start of a grand adventure, and every ending carries the whisper of a new beginning. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let your dreams carry you where stories like this go, beyond history, beyond time, into the quiet heart of wonder. The night wraps around you like a soft blanket, the world slowing into a gentle hush. Your breathing eases, a rhythmic tide carrying you away from the noise and rush of the day. Each story shared becomes a quiet companion, a lantern glowing softly in the dark. You're safe here, between pages and dreams, where history unfolds not as distant facts, but as living moments, full of breath and heartbeats, of hope and mercy. The stars outside twinkle faintly, their light a quiet lullaby, reminding you that even in the darkest times, there is beauty to be found if only you look close enough. So breathe deep, feel the calm settle like warm honey through your veins, and know that the stories you carry with you now are seeds, seeds of courage, kindness, and grace that can grow even in the most unexpected places. Tomorrow will come with new challenges, but for now, rest is your gift. Let the gentle silence cradle you, the soft shadows hold you, and the promise of morning light soothe you. Sleep well, dream deeply, and wake refreshed, ready to carry your own story forward, one quiet step at a time.